Coming to you direct from the nerve center of the galaxy's greatest comic. This is the 2000 AD Thrillcast.
Borag Thung Earthlets, and welcome to the 2000 AD Thrillcast. I am your merry host, Mulchar, and I'm very much looking forward to this episode because in a week's time in the UK, the 2000 AD Sci-Fi Special is going to be landing on shelves. It's going to be another few weeks before it's out in North America. I think 11th of July is the pub date over there. But the reason it's special is because for the very first time in 2000 AD's history, the entire lineup from writers to artists to colorists to letterers will be by women, which is a very interesting experiment. Seen lots of comment online for and against, but we're very proud of the Sci-Fi Special and the stories and the creators in it. It's something a bit different kind of artistic style, different kind of writing style, but the same characters that you know and love. If you haven't pre-ordered your copy, make sure you go along to your local comic book store or pre-order online at 2000ad.com. We have covers by Tula Lote. We've got a shop exclusive cover by Emily Ziner, who you may have heard on a previous Thrillcast. We've got Judge Dredd by Babs Tarr and Emma Beeby. We've got Rogue Trooper by Alex De Campi and Sam Beck. We've got a Future Shock by the award-winning graphic novelist Tilly Walden. We've got the return of Tyranny Rex with Katy Rex. I've just seen that. And Liana Kangas. We've got a Judge Death story by Leah Moore and newcomer Hughley Vicentes. And much more from creators like Emma Viacelli, new creators like Laura Bailey, and a wonderful poster by Marguerite Savage of Joe Anderson, which you may have seen online. It's an absolutely tip-top special, something different, something quite revolutionary for 2000 AD in its 41st year. And we've got some of the creators from that special on this edition of the Thrillcast. Talk to them a little bit about their take on the characters. Well, first up, we have two voices that we've had on here before, Emma Beeby and Leah Moore, both, I guess, veterans of 2000 AD. Leah has worked on Storm Warning and Black Shuck with her partner John Reppion, and Emma has worked on Judge Dredd, Joe Anderson, Survival Geeks with her partner Gordon Rennie. Great opportunity to talk to two people who've now cut their teeth a little bit on 2000 AD and are included in the Sci-Fi Special. Emma, let's turn to you first, because you although you're both veterans of 2000 AD now, you've got the most experience in terms of writing Judge Dredd and Judge Anderson and whatnot. Tell us a little bit about your story for the Sci-Fi Special and what we can expect.
Veteran, wow, okay. I'm just going to sit with that for a minute. I don't feel like a veteran. Yeah, the story, well, I kind of want to do something a bit fun. I'm more drawn to the kind of fun stories with Dredd. I kind of want to, always put him in situations that just make him really awkward. So I kind of went with that approach, and so it's called The Feels, and it's about a kind of weaponized empathy, in short. And there's a group of kind of Mega City 1 version of hippies that have got this weaponized drug that makes people very empathic and hippie-ish, and that all comes up against Dredd. So and there's lots of pink in it, which was really thrilling to see on the
You were working with the excellent Babs Tarr on this, her first work for 2000 AD. What was that like?
Amazing. Yeah, legit amazing. It was so exciting, and she sent me messages and sent me some of the pencils and things as it was going on, and the colours, and so I got to I got to see everything and be ridiculously excited. So it was great to see her take on it, and and all of her, drawing Dredd, and it was, it's so different to other things we're used to seeing Babs doing, and I just think she did a tremendous job, and I really wanted to give her something that she would have fun drawing, so I hope that she got that experience. She seemed to be pretty excited about it, so no, it was really nice. It was really fun.
Is there a degree of satire in your choice of subject matter for this? The kind of always the assumption that women are more interested in quote unquote girly things and emotions and what.
Yes, I freely admit to that being completely deliberate. So yeah, I definitely chose a subject matter that was girly and colours that were girly, and just I wanted to kind of, what is the scenario that would put the fear in focus of what a girl would do with Dredd. So that was really where I came from, just to just to make it more entertaining, mostly for me. So yeah, I definitely went with that, and I don't think it's I don't think Dredd acts in any way out of character. He's very Dredd about everything, and doesn't, no spoilers. He doesn't hug anyone. There's no crying on his part, so it's okay. He's still Dredd. It's fine.
Leah, let's talk about your story, which is a Judge Death story, but slightly different to what we used to.
Yes, I'm really interested actually to hear Emma say that she deliberately went for a girly pink Dredd story, because I was really excited to get to do Judge Death because he's the gothest character. So I was like, if I'm saving up goth points for this, so I was really really glad to get to do him. But I did pretty much the same thing, which was just to kind of, I thought if it's a summer special that's got just women in, then I'll make it like a female heavy cast. I thought there's lots, we all grow up reading stories that have got nothing but guys in, so I was like, yeah, let's just make it like a pile of women and Judge Death in the middle of all that. So the premise is kind of riffing from the Judgment on Gotham, the amazing famous Bisley Judge Death story. And it's funny because there's a scene in that, the famous scene in that, where Judge Death is confronted by all of these Care Bears and fluffy bunnies and things, and he's like, no. So I think it's cool. I like that's what yeah, that's what we just do. We go make everything fluffy. But so I've got a girl band who are a girl metal band, and they accidentally conjure Judge Death by finding this old kind of 8-track laying around in a secondhand shop, and they decide to cover it, and because it's such a heavy track, and they absolutely love it, and they accidentally become possessed by Judge Death. So it's loads of fun. I really I've already been on to Matt saying, please, more Judge Death, please. So
as you say, he's got form with sort of heavy metal music, and of course, so many people were introduced to Dredd and Judge Dredd because of Anthrax, I Am the Law.
Yes, there's Anthrax, I Am the Law, and the my story. I was sat there and I was trying to put the lyrics in, and obviously the lyrics are great that they use in Judgment on Gotham, but I didn't want to just repeat it. I was like, it's got to be super death metal-y, and I was looking, and there's actually there was a thrash metal band around the same time as the Anthrax song. There's a metal band called Dark Angel, and they had a track out that was called Darkness Descends, about Judge Death. They were huge fanboys. It's 1987 or something. It was ridiculously long ago, and they had this track called Darkness Descends, which is you wouldn't know what the lyrics were necessarily if you gave it just a sort of a quick listen, but it is really it's really heavy, it's really insane, and it's all about the crime is life, the judgment is death, and it's so it filled my heart with about 6 different kinds of joy when I was listening to it, and I was like, I have to do this. And then I imagined Matt looking like giving me sort of evils for like putting in a load of random lyrics. So I cheekily dropped the guys at the record company an email, and I sent them the goofiest email just going like, I'm doing this story, would it be okay, because it'd be really cool if we could use it. And I got an email back saying like, oh yeah, that's fine, they're cool, they're into it. I was like, so I randomly so it's Judge Death and this girl metal band and the guys, these random Dark Angel guys are into it, so yes.
So obviously something like Babs Tarr is a bit out of the norm for Judge Dredd artists, but then Julia Vicente is very different, not just for Judge Death Story, but also for 2008. She's got a really unique style. How did you find it?
I was really interested. I thought I was really pleased because even though obviously the point of the special is to show that like women writers and artists and colorists and letterists and everything, we can do sci-fi kind of satirical horror standing on our heads just as much as guys can. I had the slight fear that we'd only see women artists that looked like the male artists, and I did worry that we'd get just kind of female kind of clone versions, but Julia's art is so bouncy and lively and inky, and it's much more kind of an indie style. But when you see it, that makes it I find it more disturbing that then these cute little girl characters are getting possessed by Judge Death, and there's all kinds of gory, horrible mayhem happening. I think it's glorious basically to see somebody with that kind of style getting to do these characters that I absolutely adore. To 2000 AD, I adore the Dark Judges. I think it's all really fantastic. It's fantastic that this is what British comics are like, but I do think that sometimes when they become institutions, and they are, then there's that kind of it's lovely to be able to poke a bit of fun and sort of make a bit of a like Emma's saying about Judge Dredd, it's lovely to be able to say how seriously do you take yourself then? It's fun, and it's kind of I think it's refreshing. I can't wait to read the Babs Tarr's and Emma's story. I think I've been a huge fan of hers, so it's going to be fantastic to see them all. I can't wait to see the whole thing.
One thing I wanted to ask about is you've both worked on series for 2000 AD and the Judge Dredd magazine in partnership with other writers. For Emma, you work with Gordon Rennie, and Leah, you work with John Reppion. Was there, particularly considering that, let's face it, this is a fairly high-profile occasion. What were your feelings about going solo on stories like this?
Yeah, I wasn't worried about it on that front. It's a very different. I don't know about you, Leah, but I find it quite a different experience to do co-writing. It's nice because you have someone else to kind of share in the mental stuff that's in your head. And just to work out your approach together and all that stuff, and that's really nice. But at the same time, it's also nice to just do your own thing. And I absolutely cannot imagine Gordon Rennie writing this story.
It would be a very different Gordon Rennie story if it was the Fields.
His response was like, oh my goodness, there's so much pink. So yeah, I think it's definitely a Beeby story. It's definitely mine. It's not. I enjoy doing either way. I get a lot from both experiences. But yeah, so it was. It's always exciting write Dredd and do that myself. And the first times I did that was with Gordon. And the first story we worked on, I think he thought that I wouldn't want to write the Dredd parts. I would write the other parts, and I was like, no. Yeah. Right, he's on page 1, I'm doing page 1, I'm doing page 2. So it was just like all the Dredd parts, I'm writing those. So I was desperate keen to get in there and get in Dredd's head, and I've been loving that ever since. And so yeah, I'm very happy to do that myself.
Leah, what about you?
I was happy to do it myself as well. To be honest, it was I've done, like, recently I've done a few short stories just on my own, and it's been the first time I've done that for we've been writing now for like 15 years or something together, or something ridiculous, and I've never actually gone off and I've done little bits of prose or whatever by myself, but not comics. So I did a 5-pager, a Best Ditto 5-pager for Femme Magnifique, and then I did another a couple of other little bits and pieces. But I did a Cannonball Comics one for the Black Crown Quarterly for Shelley Bond, and I've realised, looking back on these things, that they've all got, John pointed it out, that there's a sort of feel to all of them. They've all got these like little angry punk women in them, and it's like whatever I'm writing, I'm like, let's make it about small angry punk women, shall we? And everyone's like, well, I suppose that could work. And I'm like, no, it really will, honestly. Let's just do that for the whole thing. So I think that there's possibly a bit of a theme developing, which I find it immensely satisfying, obviously, but I'm just hoping that this is like a winning thing, and not just that it's like, in the latter chapters of my biography where it says a descent into like complete lunacy was signalled by this peculiar turn. But no, I really enjoyed it, and I think obviously when we write together, we've just finished our new Holmes series, which is like, we write that together, and I don't think I could do the complex plotty arguing with yourself that you have to do to get something like a Sherlock Holmes book. I don't know if I could do that myself. I think it'd take me a lot longer, and I think me and John we bounce stuff around and cut each other's ideas to shreds much more efficiently than we'd managed to do ourselves. But I think for those kind of projects, then I'm always happy to, we like to sit and have a good natter and get, there's loads of stuff that we just couldn't manage to conjure up without the both of us sitting there. But I think for these little, I'm really enjoying the freedom to just kind of let my brain wander off and see where it takes me. And it's I think it's definitely different muscles that I'm using on these than I am on my on the Moore and Reppian stuff. But yeah, lots of fun. Expect more small angry punk women comics coming soon. And bring out my own zine or something.
I would read that. Just trademark it now. Small angry punk women.
Okay, if you want to write for it as well, that would be
absolutely
fantastic.
I mean, there's the central idea of this sci-fi special is that we are giving a voice to female creators, most of whom have never worked for 2000 AD before. The history of 2000 AD has been virtually entirely dominated by male voices. I wanted to get your feelings, because there's lots of strong opinions out there, both for and against. And many shades of opinion about the value, the worth of what we're doing with this special. I wanted to get your take on it, Emma, about the nature of the project and what you think the impact of it will be.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically preventing me from having any more first titles. So, I got Dredd, I got Anderson, and now all these other ones are closed to me forever, right? So there's that. But I'm very happy about that. That's wonderful. I'm delighted. Obviously, I'm delighted. It's I think it's great. I don't care much what the naysayers say. It's going to be an amazing issue, and I'm just I'm just really happy because I think it's 2000 AD saying, yeah, this is what we're here for, this is what we're about, and we'll welcome a full range of creators, and we want women creators, and here's what they can do, and y'all can shut up now. And that might just be my take. I'm not saying that's the company line, but that was my interpretation of the company line. So, I'm just yeah, I love it. I think it's fantastic, and it's bold, and it's going to look amazing, and it's going to look different, and but it's still going to be these incredible iconic characters, and I can't wait to read it. So.
As you say, you've got those two first woman to write Judge Dredd, first woman to write Judge Anderson. What was your experience of people's reaction to that happening? It
was overwhelmingly positive, which I didn't honestly expect. I was really, when I realised it was a thing, which I didn't know going in and writing that first Dredd story. I didn't really think about it, and then it was like, oh, really? Oh, okay. And by that point, it was in, and I didn't know, and obviously I was nervous and thought, oh my goodness, am I going to get, am I going to get some sort of backlash about, where's your penis? Don't you need a writing penis or something? I don't know. So
trademark it.
I was just about to say, I didn't get issued with one of those. What's going on?
Yeah, I would like it branded. Yeah, maybe writing penis.
The Emma Beeby writing penis.
I don't know. I guess I was waiting for someone to be upset, but all I got was lots of enthusiasm. And when I did my first solo one, I thought, well, now, and then no, still lots of enthusiasm. So, and same with Anderson. So I've not, all I've felt is really welcome and really positive. And yeah, it's not, I was worried and had nothing to worry about. And I think it's going to be brilliant to see all these other women, hopefully, having a same experience that I've had in 2000 AD fandom. So yes, I'm hoping for the best, and no one is going to complain about the absence of writing penis. That's my hope.
Talking about firsts, I may have to go back and double check this, but Leah, I think you are the first woman to write Judge Death.
Really? Oh, it would not surprise me. I'm very excited if so. I think I get extra goth points for that. Definitely. I'm saving up for a hearse. No, it's a funny one. Like when it was announced, I was like, "Yay, this is amazing!" And then I saw like loads of opinion, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I hadn't kind of. You always anticipate sort of people to, think, "Oh, it's just comics. It's comics." Like, of course, it'd be amazing. But yeah, I do understand though that like in a couple of the interviews that I've done about it, I've been talking a little bit because it is. There's been sort of people have said like, oh, what about, you're a pioneer. You're one of the early pioneers of being a woman in 2000 AD. And I'm like, oh, but when was my first story for 2000 AD? It was only like a few years ago. It's been running. It's as old as I am. So yeah, if that entire time has elapsed before, as you say, there's been it's been just sort of dominated by male voices, then it is strange to have that kind of have it as like, oh my goodness, there's loads of women in it, and it's like, yes, there definitely should have been before, but that to be honest, it's worth mentioning because like you could say that about all of comics, really. You could say sort of like, where are the women? Where are the why is this only happening now? I would say it's massively far on from where we were a few years ago, where there wasn't these kind of projects. I mean, the Femme Magnifique one that I mentioned, that Shelley Bond did, was just about famous women. She just wanted to do, it was in the light of the Me Too stuff, and she was like, I want to do something that actually, showcases just not just women writers and artists, but like, you know, the women that from history and, you know, pop culture. And I think that these kind of projects are hugely important, not just because they showcase that women and like artists and writers can do just as good as the boys, and, you know, and better, frankly, and, you know, with their writing penises, you get less words per minute written, I think. But I think it's important that you, it's for like representation and for people to see like that, you know, there's not just one type or like, there's no bad thing that can come of it. I think basically you're bringing the women to the traditional 2000 AD fanboys that may not have heard of them. So somebody might not have read any, you know, Julia Vicente, might not have read any Babstar. They might really enjoy them, go off, buy their other stuff. I think that's positive. I think, you know, young girls being introduced into 2000 AD itself, they might not be reading it. I think that's, you know, I can't see any real bad side to it. Like, apart from, I guess, just that it shouldn't be so novel and exciting and kind of interest worthy. It should be something that is already happening in every issue. But like I keep saying to people, you know, I think it's like a statement of intent. It's a kind of, this is what you could, you know, expect in the future, and there's no reason for that not to be the case, and we can write everything, you know. I mean, to be honest, 2000 AD is so full of like bonkers, like surreal, scary, silly. It's full of such like crazy stuff that I can't see why, you know, there shouldn't be a big pile of women in there. I think we fit right in. So
yeah, absolutely. It's always nice to meet some, you know, to meet female fans, and there's loads of them. Every time I do a signing, there's lots of.
Yeah, there's tons, and like I did a piece for Warren Ellis's blog years ago. It was about 5 or 6 years ago, and he said, "Oh, do you want to do a guest blog?" And I did a guest blog about how I was sort of baffled that comics fandom at that time. I was like, how come comics publishers aren't kind of pandering to the enormous buying potential of female fandom? Because, you know, there was like Harry Potter and Twilight and, you know, every enormous franchise that you can think of is kind of propped up by an army of really intense young women that are like, I'm going to buy that, and I'm going to buy everything to do with it, and I'm going to have the scarf, and I'm going to have the, you know what I mean? It's like they don't muck about. And I think any comics publisher that doesn't think, maybe that might be a thing, maybe we should possibly align ourselves with that kind of segment of comics, you know, of the comic buying public, then I wrote then that I was like, what is wrong with comics? You know, novels have managed it, movies have managed it, music, you know, pop music, any pop star ever have any money at all if it wasn't for young women and their rather, as I say, rather intense fandom. So yeah, comics catches up several decades too late and goes like, yes, but I think, you know, there's no negative to it. I just think there just needs to be more. So yeah.
And in terms of looking to the future, obviously there are lots of established characters from 2000 AD's past that I'm sure you both love to get your teeth into. They're kind of fresh ideas, fresh characters that you'd love to see developed for 2000 AD.
I'm supposed to pitch you something now?
No. I mean more in terms of kind of types of character.
Oh, right, okay. I mean, there's always that kind of scope in 2000 AD. I mean, you can do anything within just, you know, certain boundaries. I mean, look at Survival Geeks. You know, it somehow manages to fit into 2000 AD, and you know, and it's a bit different and comedy and off the wall, and you know, has a young female character in it. So yeah, I mean, I think you can certainly do a lot of different kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, it would be great to see female-led content and just a generally wider range of content could come in. And there's no reason why not. And getting these kind of new creators in to see the potential in 2000 AD, and particularly the caliber of creators that are coming in. Yeah, there could be some pretty exciting things could come of that, and new characters would be fantastic.
Leah, what about you?
I was just thinking the enormous, astronomical success of Black Panther would probably suggest that Afrofuturism is something that 2000 AD is missing a trick on, or we possibly need a giant kind of women, and black women at that, kind of some giant epic story. I think would probably be a good idea. I think probably the thing with science fiction is that you're not limited to any kind of and you're not limited at all. You can literally go, it's this planet, it has these rules, they're all cowboys, but they're not just cowboys, they're lizard cowboys. And I think that the problem with these kind of with genre fiction is that sometimes you just kind of miss giant in getting all excited about the giant robot lizard cowboys, which is my next pitch for by the way. I think that sometimes you miss great swathes of dead interesting creators or characters or sections of society that there just should be a lot larger amounts of. So yes, more I one of my favorite science fiction books is River of Gods by Ian MacDonald, and it's amazing. It's all set in India, and it's got this crazy kind of avatars of gods, but they're up in the cloud, and so it's got kind of all the Hindu gods and everything. It's fantastic. It's really exciting to see all of that kind of mythology brought to life, and I think that's what all the Wakanda Black Panther stuff. It's there are so many ways of looking at things that are not from a kind of white Western kind of colonial kind of, because all of science fiction stuff tends to get a bit colonial. It's a bit imagine if you went further and discovered things, and it's what if those things were already there, and then we just had stories about them without anybody discovering them. They just happened to be there. So I think there's plenty of, and it would be obviously it'd be great if the creators were involved were from more diverse backgrounds as well. I think there's plenty of them out there. It's I was thinking the other day, I was looking on who I follow on Twitter. I follow an obscene amount of people on Twitter, but that is because if I ever see women artists, some men artists, but mainly women artists, I follow them just because they're good. And I'm it's like Pokemon. I've actually got a sickness where I'm I need to keep it and then try and evolve it into something. And oh my God. So I've got, if you follow me on Twitter and look who I follow, there is just a catalogue of amazing women and artists, and most of them are probably about half of them are black, and also they're trans, or they're all different. And I think the more different people you have making comics, you get more different comics out of it, and I think it's good. So yeah, I'm going to always be trying to suggest people that I follow, people that I'm digging about, finding people that whose artwork excites me and pushing them. So yes, that's what I would like to see loads more of in 2000 AD.
Well, thanks so much to Emma and Leah. Next up, we have two brand new creators for 2000 AD, but one of them you'll have heard on a previous Thrillcast. Katy Rex is a writer and editor from the States who was always a great help on the 2000 AD booth at San Diego and New York Comic Cons, where she's writing a new Tyranny Rex story, and the art's by Liana Kangas. And we got them on the 2000 AD Thrillcast to talk about their Tyranny Rex tale for the Sci-Fi Special. Let's talk about Tyranny Rex. Katy, now you're no stranger to 2000 AD. You've been on the podcast before because we know each other from your excellent work helping us out at San Diego and New York. But why, when you were approached to be a part of the Sci-Fi Special, did you want to do Tyranny Rex?
I just think that she is the raddest character. She's got so much going on, and I don't know, she's just super likable to me. The art thing and the criminal thing and the nun thing, and like I like it. I like how it's sort of a mishmash that still makes sense in one person.
Because she's not unless you've been reading 2000 AD for quite a while, she's not one of the better known characters, but she is one of the relatively few female characters. What sort of aspects of the way that John Smith created her did you like the most? Was it the fact that there's so many aspects that you can just sort of tell whatever story you want?
I think that even though she has a lot of aspects of things she's done, her personality is really strong throughout. So it did give me a lot of flexibility in terms of the actual story, but her role was always going to be really characteristic of her.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the story that you've got in the Sci-Fi Special? What have you got Tyranny do? Because it's been a long time since she's been in our pages.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I ought to say. You'll have to tell me if I'm just interrupt me if I'm saying too much, right?
Okay, yeah, sure.
All right. So the story, I guess, is basically pre music piracy, I'll call it. Tyranny Rex would like to download a car.
Okay.
And so she's got some torrents, Russian torrents, actually, to download some cars, and then chaos ensues.
I'm sensing a little bit of satire in this one, sort of contemporary event style things.
I can't imagine what you mean.
Because we've had conversations online when you were looking to pitch the story and how you wanted to approach it. Was it because you've written American comics before, American style comics, because you've worked on Jade Street, which is the sort of how do you describe Jade Street?
Punk rock magical girls fight patriarchy.
There we go. That's succinct. But with this, it was much more compact. I mean, you had 5-6 pages to cope with.
Yeah, it's definitely a different type of writing.
How so?
The stories you can tell are different. The pacing is different. But really, the goals are different in short form versus long form. You're trying to really convey a lot in a snapshot.
And with an established character like that, what was your approach? Because obviously some of the readership will know who she is, some of the readership won't. Is it difficult not to include lots of exposition about who she is and what she does?
It's not difficult at all. I think she's a green chick with a tail, and everything she does is very expressive of exactly who she is.
Fair enough. Liana, let's talk to you. What's your experience, if any, of 2000 AD before you came to this project?
Oh, man. Other than coming across the issue here and there back from when I used to work at comic shops, I wouldn't see much of it, to be honest. Especially probably because the comic shops I worked in were a little bit smaller. So we wouldn't get as many, orders unless they were like specially requested. So, most of what I knew of 2000 AD was the typical Dredd stuff, which is still cool. I'm a huge sci-fi fan, so to be able to get to research into all this was the best part of the job.
And how did you come to be working on the project?
Matt Smith actually contacted me, which was really cool. It was like unexpected email, and he was like, we have this project. We'd love to have you on it. It's with Katy. And I already knew Katy's work from Jade Street. So it was an immediate yes to me, for me. So
tell us a little bit about your background in comics. What stuff have you worked on before?
Surprisingly, I'm kind of still starting out. I worked on the Mine anthology that has an Eisner nomination right now. And I worked on this 2000 AD thing, and mostly some of my own creator-owned comics. And yeah, I'm pushing forward, trying to get as many comics as I can.
Excellent. So tell us a bit about your impression, because clearly this is a character that you've come to absolutely fresh. What are your impressions of Tyranny Rex?
It was kind of cool seeing a little bit of the background of her and then mixing it with Katy's script. Katy described it exactly like she is who she is, and it was kind of nice she's almost kind of relatable. I view her kind of as a 80s, 90s badass. Very like chill, down to earth, kind of, sassy Sauron, if you will.
Explain to us a little bit about your take, because she's been drawn by, some of the greats of 2000 AD, Steve Dillon, Steve Yowell, Paul Marshall. What was your decision-making process and how you wanted to portray her?
That was the most intimidating factor of all this. But it was cool to use her from all of their viewpoints as inspiration to kind of gather up how I could draw her. I wanted to keep her kind of loyal to the previous way that she's been drawn before. And it was cool to kind of put that in my style. And I think my style fits really well with it because I love the 80s and 90s anyway. So, just I try not to compare myself to, Steve Dillon or anything, but she was really fun to draw. And Katy, I think, gave life to her. And I don't know, I think it worked. I think we made a good team. So
I agree. Absolutely. Your take, no, not on our teamwork is what I mean.
Yeah.
The collaboration has been really great.
Because so often in kind of mainstream style comics, the script that's done gets given to the artist and there's no communication between the two. But it sounds like you two really kind of chatted through what you wanted from this.
We kind of found each other. It was nice. It was kind of cool being able to like bounce a couple things off of her. And she had a couple of requests, which was fun because I like bringing, any type of view that the writer has and, putting my own little twist on it too. So I think it was a fun little project we got to do. I hope we can do more stuff together.
Yeah.
One of the things, Liana, that I wanted to ask is because so often, and I'm guilty of this, when talking about the brevity, the shortness of the kind of stories you get in 2000 AD, particularly with things like Future Shocks, we tend to over-focus on the writers. How do you as a writer fit in a story into 4, 5, 6 pages? And when perhaps we should also be asking the artist about this as well, because your storytelling in such a short amount of time and a small amount of space has to be really on point, doesn't it?
I was a little... especially even with the layout being different, the page size, it was kind of cool to use that as a tool for fitting everything within the amount of pages that we were given. And I think that because Katy was able to make an impactful story in that short amount of time, I tried to fit as much as possible without it being too much or too detailed or, overwhelming on the page. And I don't know, maybe like this is going to be the start of, a revamp of Tyranny for, readers to be reinvested in her. Hopefully we did that within that short amount of pages. So.
with Tyranny Rex, with that wonderful mix of music and contemporary culture and style that she has, do you think it's time for a revamp of the character? Because like I said, it's been a while. She went off and became a warrior nun and everything, but it just seems like this almost feels like a moment for that kind of, I don't know, media savvy character to pop back.
I don't think I would go as far as a revamp. I think she's pretty perfect, pretty close to the way she is. I think just bringing her back at all would be topical and relevant.
Yeah,
like a resurgence.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I kind of want to talk so much more about what you guys have done, but it'd just be so full of spoilers that we wouldn't be able to include any of it in the podcast. But I mean, let's talk sort of about that, because one of the things we've had Leah Moore and Emma Beeby chatting earlier. One of the things I do obviously need to talk about is the Sci-Fi Special. And Katy, I know that you've been interviewed by Doom Rocket, where you had some quite strong opinions about the nature of the project and how you view what it's trying to do. Do you want to explain a little bit about your feelings about the Sci-Fi Special?
I assume you're referring to the fact that it's your all-female issue?
I was dancing around the edge of that, yes. And I don't know why.
Well, I'm just going to go straight on to that.
Okay.
I see a lot of the points people have made about it in terms of tokenizing or in terms of pandering, and I just don't think that it's any of those things at all. I think it's just a really cool way to showcase some new talents and some people that have worked with 2000 AD before, and just bring a different lens to it. I think it's just a matter of different perspectives and visibility.
Liana, what's your take on the whole thing? Because obviously you were invited to be a part of this completely out of the blue. What's your feelings about it being an all-female creator special?
I kind of have to agree with Katy, especially because I am, part of the new talent that was brought on. It's just bringing a totally different perspective, and whether it is or is not a marketing, tactic, or even just to get new readers, which I totally support. I support an all-female lineup, especially if whoever is being chosen is well thought out, curated specifically, and they're good at what they do. And I'm very pro supporting other female artists and writers. So I'm probably one of the one side of people that wants to stay very neutral when it comes to it. But I very much support other women in comics. It's one of my favorite parts of being in comics is to connect with all the other women,
Katy, one thing that we have seen over the last few years is the increase in women who are taking an active role in comics. I'm not just talking about the big names like Gail Simone and Kelly Sue DeConnick. I'm also talking about the kind of grassroots stuff. You and I have talked about the Valkyries, who are the kind of network of women who work in comic book stores who are looking to help and promote and support female creators and progressive comic books and ideas. Do you think the tide is turning? Has it turned? Do you see that women are becoming more accepted within the comic book industry? I'm not talking about people on the internet. I'm talking about in the actual industry.
Sure. Well, first of all, I do want to say that the Valkyries is the coolest girl gang that you will ever meet. But aside from that, I think there are still a lot of obstacles. There are women who walk into comic shops and are ignored or even mocked because they're trying to buy Batman, and some guy behind the counter doesn't like that they don't know Frank Miller. And so I think that there is still gatekeeping, but I think overall the comics community has really embraced the idea that we have this media that we love, and we love it because it's awesome. And comics is sequential art is such a unique way to express a story. And so sharing that with a new audience, I think, is just so exciting for a lot of old school fans. Also, I think in terms of from the creative side, shortly after, I'm going to say the 90s, after the comics code here was being ridiculed, I think there was a pretty significant counterculture movement making comics that didn't belong to the hegemony. And I think that those comics are now becoming mainstream, which I think is really cool.
One final thing that I did want to ask about, not to, I just wanted to kind of leave that as it is, because I think absolutely you've hit the nail on the head. But one thing I did want to ask about was who decided amongst you to make Tyranny green rather than the brown? Because and you know, I know there was discussion. Because obviously you've got the covers from the original run in the 80s where she's kind of pale brown, but then when Will Simpson's drawing her, she turns green. Who decided?
I think this was very mutual.
It's funny because we had her brown at first, but there was a little bit of discussion, and we were just kind of like, yeah, green will work. Green will definitely work.
It's iconic.
Yeah, especially from the cover standpoint.
Yeah.
The very loud, good 90s covers.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Well, I mean, I agree. Green is best, I think. If you're walking around with a giant lizard tail, then that's probably the colour you want to go for.
Good, you're correct.
Katie has put the hammer down. Green. It's green.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So if you two wanted to do more Tyranny Rex, what kind of stories would you want? Because she's done some incredible things. Like we say, she became a warrior nun at one point. What kind of things would you want in the further adventures of Tyranny Rex?
This is a fun question. Man, she's such a diverse character that the possibilities for her are pretty endless. I could see Katie doing so much with her, and it would be very fun to draw.
I think it would be really cool to spend more time on her art, because she is an artist. And I think we could get really weird with that, and that would be really fun. I also think that it would be fun to come up with a few more scams for her to run.
I totally agree. I love this one that we just did, so I'm like, we could do that a little longer, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, thanks to Katy and Liana for proving that Tyranny Rex isn't extinct and will be appearing in the Sci-Fi Special. Another creator who's been on this podcast before and has been working with Arthur Wyatt on the Dredd movie tie-in strip is Alex De Campi. That's coming to an end in the latest magazine, and it was great to chat to Alex about what she has in store for everyone's favourite blue-skinned genetic infantryman, a rogue trooper. Tell us a little bit about Rogue Trooper: The 1,000 Days, because based on the interview that you did for the 2000 AD blog, it seems like this is a character you've really enjoyed getting your teeth into.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the original, Jerry Finley Day Rogue Trooper has been a favorite of mine over the years of reading 2000 AD, and the wonderful thing about the summer specials or any of the specials is you can kind of say, well, I want to do something that's not quite current continuity, and Tharg lets you do it. Whereas in the program or the mag, like you'd have to find a way to like bring Rogue Trooper back or bring Friday back. And that's a much longer negotiation, but I could just pop in and say, I'm just going to do this random story from back in the day. And Tharg said yes, and that's what I did. It was absolutely fantastic. And I've always been a fan of military history and war stories. But I think like you just never run out of war stories, because there's always something you could read about from some period of human conflict that you can then apply that story to, the New Earth or Megacity One or many of the other sci-fi or fantasy environments at 2000 AD. So I had ideas.
Was there anything in particular you drew on for the 1,000 Days?
Yes, it was based on a combination of some of the Hurtgen Forest conflicts in World War II, which were a hot mess. And a rather little known conflict in the American Vietnam War, in the Michelin Plantation. And the Michelin Plantation was a rubber plantation in northern Vietnam. And it was, hundreds of acres, this huge thing. I mean, Michelin, they make the tires, they own a lot of land. And the trees are planted in specific geometric rows. It's like, if you're used to coming through a jungle or a proper forest, you come into this thing and it's laid out like in a grid, which would make it a complete nightmare for fighting in, but also strangely easier in some ways. And the Michelin Plantation would charge you $250 per tree if you blew up a tree while trying to save your own life. In the immortal words of Ripley, they can bill me.
Wow, that's I'd never heard of that before. That's absolutely fascinating. I mean, what's interesting is without giving too much away in terms of spoilers, you've taken that inspiration and done something very New Earth with it, haven't you? Yes.
I mean, New Earth is really interesting to me because it's a war that's gone on for a really long time. So there are going to be people just bogged down, and not really. And Millicom isn't exactly going to be able to take care of all of its fronts. There are some that are just simply backwaters where you're bogged down and you're not a priority, and you're just going to have to sit there and hope you don't die before you become a priority. And that's essentially what we did with the 1,000 Days. We took a platoon of Southern soldiers who are in essentially a petrified forest. So we have that strange forest environment. And there are some Norts on about a kilometer away. And they're sort of lobbing stuff at each other, but that's about it. And nobody can move forwards and nobody can move back, and they're stuck. And when you're stuck in one of these extremely high pressure environments for a very long period of time, things just naturally get a little bit surreal and people start to unravel somewhat. And so you've got the group of soldiers before the arrival of Rogue Trooper are dealing with the unraveling of certain personalities and some bad, within their own group, and trying to figure out what to do to survive and also to get back into Millicom's good graces, where they can get nice things like actual food that isn't rations.
Let's talk a little bit about Sam Beck and Ava de la Cruz, because I'm really interested in the kind of the style of Sam and the colours that Ava has brought to it. Did you work with Sam on this strip, as in talking to one another, or was it very much kind of, here's my script, see what you do with it?
She didn't speak to me at all. It was actually kind of odd. I know I'm used to very collaborative working environments because a lot of what I do is creator owned. And even when I do work for hire, I tend to sort of back channel the artist and say, hey, I'm here. If you need anything, let me know. And we've had great fun doing that over the years. I mean, Fernando Ruiz and I managed to sneak a whole bunch of Easter eggs into Archie versus Predator by like messaging each other on Facebook about things we wanted to do, but we couldn't really tell the editors we were doing because they might object to us like sticking a Punisher Easter egg in an Archie / Dark Horse comic book. But we did it anyway. We had a grand old time. And when we first started doing publicity, like someone CC'd me with Sam, and I messaged Sam and said, hey, I'm Alex. I hope the script isn't too terrible. My scripts can be tough. My scripts are hardly ever beginner scripts. So I said to her, hi, here I am. Let me know if you need anything. Let me know if anything is absolutely terrible, and then we can potentially rework it. And then she never replied. So like, it's funny. Like I've seen like 3 panels of the finished copy, and that's it. And she's never spoken to me. But I assume, Tharg was holding her hand and sending her some of the old Rogue Trooper stuff for reference, because what I've seen looks really great.
Mm. Let's talk about that old Rogue Trooper stuff for a moment. You mentioned in your interview for the blog that you'd mainlined hundreds of pages of original Rogue stories to prepare yourself for this. What was your overwhelming impression?
I mean, you're talking to someone who grew up on Commando comics. I loved it. It's still great. It's still really, really good comics, and the art is amazing. I mean, the old Cam Kennedy stuff. God, who else was drawing back in the day?
You had Brett Ewins, you had Colin Wilson.
Brett's art. Of course, I'm sorry, I just had a mental blank. It's early here in the morning in the US. It's all in black and white, but it just doesn't need color. It's so good. I mean, thank God for the 2000 AD app, because I just downloaded like the first 4 Rogue trades and just spent a very nice rainy weekend reading all of them. I love my job. I'm sorry, I can't do that today. I'm reading comic books for work.
Did you try to inject some of that original sort of Jerry Finley Day feel into your script?
I mean, sort of. I mean, there was a little bit of some of the Alan Moore shorts in it too, because Alan did mostly standalone stories, like just one, 10 to 12 page story, self-contained. And Jerry's, as they went on, they got longer. They started off as like 2 or 3 part, and then would end up with these sort of 12 part things. But yes, I mean, I did try to inject that feeling of it. I mean, I kind of feel that I've done enough comics at this point where I want to tell a really good story. I don't want to get a lot of credit for like reinventing anything. So I wasn't coming in trying to like reinvent or like modernize Rogue Trooper in any way. I just don't think there's a need to. I mean, it was kind of like when I've been doing my Dredd work as well, like it's really good as it is, and there's enough space to tell very interesting, very original stories without trying to be a prat about like making him different just so you can stick your mark on it. And a lot of it was just detail research, how is Bagman's character defined as opposed to Helms, as opposed to Gunners? What's in the bag, and how does he get it out? And what weapons do they use? What flying vehicles do they have? In what situation would the troops do this or that? So a lot of was very specific to getting the details of the world right. And it's a fairly complicated world, especially after about 1,000 pages of Rogue stories. There's a lot that's been explored.
One thing a lot of writers over the years have referred to is the biochips, Bagman, Helm, and Gunner, and how Jerry used them in very specific ways, and how sometimes, I mean, if you look at Dave Gibbons's reboot, the War Machine stuff with Friday, that was one of the first things he jettisoned because he felt they were silly. What's your take on them? And do they help or hinder you as a writer?
They're difficult. they're definitely the most challenging thing about Rogue Trooper is to tell a story where they have meaningful interaction and a real place in the story. I mean, I can see why Dave, who did them out, because it's much easier to write the story without them. Because you have essentially three essentially mostly inanimate objects who you have to talk to and have to talk back and have to do something, because there's no point having them there if they don't do anything. There's like a story logic point that, like, if you have this thing that can talk, it needs to talk and it needs just not say trivial things. It needs to have an important role in the story. And so the challenge in any Rogue story, in any classic Rogue story, is creating something where the three biochip characters can have meaningful interaction and actually move the plot forwards. It's not just all Rogue himself, the fleshy one, the cloned one, doing his thing.
You're no stranger to 2000 AD readers, well, particularly those who read the Judge Dredd magazine, because you've been working with Arthur Wyatt on the Dredd movie series, which has now come to an end. You and Arthur and Henry have rounded that off. What's the future for you at 2000 AD? Because I know when we've talked to him, because we had you on the podcast, and like I said, you've been interviewed on the blog. There seems to be a lot of enthusiasm from you to keep working for 2000 AD. So what would you like to be next?
Gosh, I'm working up I've got a solo Dredd story in the magazine coming up, and then another one planned for around Christmas time, which should be a lot of fun. I'd like to do a longer Dredd story at some point, because I've been mostly doing 10-page one-shots. I mean, I'd still like to do more Rogue Trooper. I'd bring Friday back somehow. I mean, that I know Tharg's like, I don't know. So or find a way to do Rogue, that's a longer discussion. So I don't think more Rogue is going to happen soon, unfortunately. So enjoy the summer special story while you can. It may not be repeated for some years, but yeah, just gradually working. I'd like to do a lot more of the classic characters. Sinister Dexter would be something that's fairly easy for me, because I write lots of like action, thriller, spy stuff anyway. They're not really spies, I know. I've just got to wait until my schedule, my creator-owned schedule, calms down a bit. This summer it's just a mess. So you'll probably see some standalone one-shot stories from me in the Meg, and every so often, and as we hopefully move towards a longer thing that I can sink my teeth into. I mean, Kristen's an old friend, and when he's got some spare time, I'd love to do something with him. He also wants to do Rogue Trooper, so maybe Chris and I can come so cap in hand, Tharg, and say, please, can we have some more, sir?
Well, thanks so much to Alex, Liana, Katy, Leah and Emma for talking about what they've got in store for the Sci-Fi Special, which is out next week in the UK and next month in North America. And that's just a small sampling of the creative talent on show in this special issue. Do go along to your local comic book store and demand a copy when it comes out, or you can pre-order from the 2000 AD shop, where you can pick up the shop-exclusive Emily Ziner cover showing Judge Hershey. And thanks to you, Earthlets, for tuning in to another episode of the 2000 AD Thrillcast. Make sure you tune in 2 weeks' time, where we're finally going to be following up on our Arthur Ranson interview from a couple of months ago. If you've not listened to that, please do go along and have a listen. It was absolutely fascinating to sit down with Arthur and discuss his life and work. And for the roundtable, we've got a small group of people who not only like Arthur, but also massively appreciate his work. And we discuss Arthur's impact and career. Really fascinating discussion with some unique insights. Make sure you tune in 2 weeks' time. Until then, Earthlets, splendid Verthweg.
Will power levels dangerously high. Alert! Alert! Read 2000 AD every week. Ask your comic book store or newsagent now. Subscribe to the galaxy's greatest comic at 2000ADonline.com. Subscribe digitally on our apps for Apple, Android, and Windows 10. And download DRM free copies from 2000ADonline.com. Alert! Alert! Stand by for urgent updates. Search for 2000 AD on Twitter and Facebook. Watch the latest videos at youtube.com/2000 AD online. And follow on Instagram at Insta2000 AD. Program complete. Shutting down.